Hi guys, James at Goddard Radio Moscow Beer and Metal Reviews again for you today with another video beer review. For this one we are going to have a look at another Melbourne brewery. So we're going to go to the Hawthorn district this time and have a taste of Hawthorn Brewing Company's Pilsner beer. And this one is supposed to be modelled on the Czech Pilsen beers, so it should be quite an interesting one. I've not reviewed a kind of Pilsen beer in quite a while actually. I think the last one that I reviewed was the one from the Brewdog 4-pack, the Unleash the Yeast. So should be quite an interesting one for us to try. But as is usual then with my beer reviews, I'll take you through a very kind of short, brief history about the brewery. The brewery website's in the video description for you below, along with a link to the other reviews that I'll hopefully do from these guys in the future. And just fast forward if you want to get right to the tasting. So anyway, as I mentioned to you, this brewery is based in the Hawthorn suburb, which is in eastern Melbourne. So the brewery was founded by three friends, Darren Milo, Pete Willis and Hamish Reid, who all had a history of home brewing. And the guys had all been involved in the corporate and legal world beforehand, so they actually had useful connections when they decided to establish the company in Hawthorn, and this was back in 2008, and they did release their first beer back in mid-2009, so they've been going for about 5-6 years now. So the labelling and branding that you can actually see on the bottle here was apparently designed by the Leo Burnett company, and it serves as a piss take to the jargon found on kind of modern lager beers, you know, like Heineken and all of this kind of thing, the kind of macro beers if you like. It's supposed to be a piss take at that. So it says things on the label, imported from Hawthorn and premium flavour and everything like this. And it is actually a craft beer. It is brewed in small batches, so it does have the right to kind of piss take these things. But the company have been trying to find a permanent home for themselves over the last few years, but they've actually increased their offering as well to 6 beers, and they now have national distribution throughout Australia as well as some exports. I think it's to Singapore and stuff like that that they export these days. But the bulk of their beer is in fact brewed at the Mildura brewery, which is in northwest Victoria. And they also brew some down at Southern Bay, which I think is down near Frankston in southeastern Melbourne. I think it's down there somewhere. But when introducing their new beers, they've actually got quite a novel method, which has obviously come from their marketing side of things. They tend to bring them in as a seasonal keg to test the market, and then if successful, they'll actually release them as the bottled seasonal for the following year. And then if it is so successful, they do actually consider bringing it in as a permanent member of the core range. And as I said, they do have 6 members of that core range just now. So anyway, that's a little bit of a brief history of the Hawthorn Brewing Company for you. Hopefully we'll see them opening up their own kind of facility in the next little while. But just to list the other beers you can get from these guys, they have an Australian IPA, which is supposed to be a really nice beer. I need to see if I can get a hold of that one. They have a golden ale, this guy the Pilsner, the premium pale ale, amber ale, and also the wit beer. And I believe the wit beer actually did start off as a seasonal, but please correct me on that if I'm wrong. So anyway, let's get on to the tasting of this guy now. As I mentioned to you at the start, it's a Czech Pilsen style beer, and it's 4.6% alcohol content. And the hop varieties that I got for this one, it just said that it uses German and Czech hops, and it says on the back, in the tradition of the travelling merchants of old flavour merchant crisscross the globe to bring home the secrets of the world's best brewers. It is only by trialling and refining these techniques that we're able to create beers of such distinction, like this Czech style lager, the perfect balance of sweet Pilsner malt and refreshing hop bitterness. Another world class beer imported from Hawthorn. Follow the trail of flavour merchants at hawthornbrewing.com.au. And it says, yeah, it's 801 Glenfarrie Road, Hawthorn, if you're interested to go and visit them. But yeah, have a look at the brewery website and see what you think of it yourself. And it says brewed naturally, preservative free. If I bring up the camera there, you can see the artwork. It's got a nice kind of a ship on it here. I'm not sure why they didn't call it a Pilsen beer rather than a Pilsner. Maybe just because Pilsner's better known. But if it's a Czech style lager, I would have thought it should have been called Pilsen. But you know, each to their own. So we'll get this guy out and get on with the tasting then. 4.6% Czech Pilsner style beer, as I said to you. As you can see, a nice kind of smoky opening on this guy. I think we're going to get a nice... You can smell this one, it smells very kind of fresh. You do, even without paying too much attention to the nose, just when you're pouring it out the bottle, you will get quite a waft of the kind of pale malts that you expect from this particular beer style. Still a little bit in there, but we can have a look at the colour of it for the moment. As you can see, a nice 2-finger kind of frothy white head there. It's frothy in the middle, but it is more bumpy as you get around to the edges there. And you can see there's a lot of carbonation in this one actually, a lot of little bubbles kind of rushing up to the surface there, and there's a lot of big bubbles sticking around the side as well. It's completely transparent, as you can see if I put my fingers behind it. And in terms of the colour, I'd describe it as a kind of pale golden straw, which really is kind of what you expect from this particular style of beer, but it looks a very attractive beer, so hopefully it is quite a good kind of craft lager. I've had quite a few breweries who have had a go at the craft lager and not quite cracked it in my opinion, but hopefully these guys can do it. So in terms of the aroma with this guy, it has everything you would expect from a lager beer. The nose, as you would expect, isn't too kind of strong in this one, but you've got a nice big waft of kind of bready and pale malts coming out of this one. Not really much in the way of yeastiness or anything, but there is a kind of aromatic element to the hops coming out too. Got a nice kind of floral, grassy, aromatic hop coming out. And there is the little bit of citrus that you would expect from there as well. But yeah, there's quite a big nose of the sort of pale malt that you would expect from this beer style. And there is a little bit of kind of white bread in there too, but as is always the case with kind of Pils beers, the nose on them isn't too strong. But even with kind of German and Czech beers, I always found that the nose isn't all that strong, if it makes sense. It's very rare to find a German beer that has such a strong nose, but their flavour profiles are usually very big. So let's see if this is the case with this one. So this is the Pilsner beer, Czech style Pils, from Hawthorn Brewing Company, based in Melbourne. Cheers. And I have to say, just on one little sip, that is a good lager. It's nice, it's very nicely balanced actually, and it does have that nice balance between the hop and the malt base in there, so it's really quite good actually. Yeah, I mean the thing is, what I would say about this one is, it has all the elements that you expect from a sort of macro lager, if that makes sense, but they're a lot more pronounced. So the malt base is a lot more pronounced and the hop base is a lot more pronounced. So it does really fit the bill as a craft lager, if that makes sense, which is really good. And the lager style, I have to admit, is one that's hard to please me on because I used to live in Germany, but this one I have to say I'm quite impressed with. So yeah, what you'll feel with this beer, you've got the typical kind of pale malt base that just kind of blankets the middle of the tongue there, and it's got some nice bready feel to it, but I would say that the malt base isn't too full, if that makes sense. It is definitely more of a pale malt base than a big bready malt base as you can get with some of these beers. But what's really nice about this one is that you've got a big hop presence kind of makes its way around the edges of the mouth there. It's really nice the way they've done this actually. Yeah, this is a really good one. I can see this being a very good, this would be one of my go-to session beers if I had it readily available back home. But this is a really nice lager. If you are into the kind of craft takes on lager, really give this one a go. As I said, you've got that nice big pale malt base in there that kind of blankets the middle of the tongue, and right round the edges you're getting the nice kind of florally and aromatic-y flavours coming out of the hops there. It's really nice, and it's got this really nice dry character around the edge of the tongue, and it's quite a dry Pils beer, which I would definitely say is the kind of style I like. You want it to be nice and refreshing at the same time, but the dryness really kind of it's good for the hot weather which you have down here in Australia, so you can see why this one is really quite has that kind of character in it, I should say. This would actually be a really good beer for, you know, just sitting with some barbecue steaks and stuff. I can see it going really well with that. But yeah, the hop character around the edges of the tongue, you'll notice there's just this kind of little oily bubble that kind of comes towards the front of the tongue. You get a little bit of the citrus in there, but it is really a very kind of floral and aromatic-y dry mouthfeel around the edges of the palate there, and there is a little bit of the kind of lighter grassy flavours coming out in there, but you will notice that with this, it's a really quite powerful aromatic and floral character that comes out of this one. It's a really good lager, this. I'm very hard to impress with lagers, I will reiterate that, but I am impressed with this one. This is a good drinking lager, this. I would love to see what it's like on tap actually, so hopefully I can pick it up sometime there. In terms of the mouthfeel though, I would say it is light to mid-bodied, maybe just pushing the mid-bodied thing a bit more. As I say, the flavour on this one, it has all the elements that you expect of a kind of macro lager, but all the flavour is more pronounced, and that makes it feel a little bit heavier. So I would think it's fair to say that this guy is a little bit more mid-bodied than a lot of things you'll come across. It's not so much as crisp as some of them. The carbonation is pretty smooth, but as I say, it's got a more full mouthfeel to it actually. And if you're an ale person and aren't so keen on lagers, then this is maybe a good sort of compromise, if you like, because it does feel a little bit fuller actually. The carbonation, as I said, is very, very smooth, but this one has a lot of dry character, particularly around the edges of the tongue, and there is a little bit of oiliness to it as well, and you'll feel that kind of building as you make the transition from the kind of pale malt base into the sort of hoppy dryness that comes into the aftertaste. And I would say that in the aftertaste as well, you start to get that pale malt pushing its way back through gradually, and the dryness just kind of subsides a little bit. But as I say, overall, this is a really, really nice kind of craft take on a lager. It has all the elements you expect of a macro lager, but the flavours are more pronounced, and that's the whole idea behind craft beer. So I have to say, I think they've done this one very, very well, and hopefully I can actually review some of the other beers that come out of their range. So hopefully I can pick those up in the store, and if they do have Australia-wide distribution, I should be able to do that quite easily. So I'm sure you will see some more Hawthorn Brewing Company reviews from me in the near future. But anyway, I hope as always you've enjoyed this beer review. I've really enjoyed this one, probably one of the nicest kind of craft lagers that I've reviewed on the channel, in fact. So as always, please let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below, and please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. And as I always ask my Australian viewers, please recommend some more beers for me to have a look at while I'm down here in Australia. So I hope you've enjoyed this one, and I will catch you soon with my next beer review. Cheers!